Lauren awoke in the stillness of night, an unsettling quiet enveloping her, a gnawing sense that something was amiss. The gentle illumination of the bedside lamp cast delicate shadows throughout the room, draping everything in soft, muted hues. She stirred her eyes, still heavy with sleep, when the unmistakable silhouette of a figure loomed at the foot of her bed, snapping her into full awareness. Blinking rapidly to dispel any lingering remnants of dreams, she confirmed it a tall, slender shape stood there motionless, as if poised for her recognition. "Michael," she whispered, her voice barely breaking the silence. Hoarse from the sudden disruption of her slumber, there was no response, only an unsettling silence that lingered too long. Her heartbeat quickened, and her hand instinctively clutched the edge of the blanket. The figure advanced a step, allowing the dim light to reveal part of its face. It wasn't Michael. Those cold blue eyes, brimming with a disquieting blend of confusion and something more sinister, rendered Lauren immobile. "Ethan!" she gasped, a mix of shock and fear coursing through her. He stood there silent and unyielding, his gaze fixed upon her. Quickly, she sat up, her body tense, her mind racing, as every nerve screamed at her to be cautious. "What are you doing here? Why are you standing in my room in the middle of the night?" Ethan shifted uncomfortably, as if grappling for the right words. I just wanted to make sure you were okay," he said, his voice low and trembling. Yet something about his tone felt off. Lauren sensed it in the chill of his words, in the way his gaze flickered away from hers and then darted back. She stood, creating distance between them. Her tone was firm yet measured. "Okay, I was asleep, Ethan, and you came into my room uninvited. Do you realize how inappropriate this is?" Ethan didn't respond. He simply stood there, staring at her, his expression unreadable. It was as if he were attempting to decode something about her, something she couldn't grasp. The air in the room grew heavier, more suffocating with each passing second. Lauren's chest tightened as she fought to maintain her composure. "Ethan, I need you to leave right now," she said, her voice sharper. This time he moved. But instead of heading for the door, Ethan stepped closer, closing the gap she had tried to create. Lauren instinctively stepped back. "You don't understand," he whispered, his voice nearly breaking. "You're perfect. You're the only one in this house who cares about me." A chill crawled down Lauren's spine. She didn't dare look away from him, fearing what he might do if she did. "Ethan, stop this now," she said, her voice hardening. But before she could say anything further, Ethan suddenly turned and walked out, leaving Lauren standing there trembling in the dark. The door closed behind him with a heavy thud, but the silence that followed felt even heavier. Lauren took a deep breath, trying to steady herself, her pulse still racing. She couldn't understand what had just happened. Why had Ethan been there, and why did his words carry an undercurrent of something so haunting? That night she didn't sleep a wink. Lauren knew this wasn't something she could brush aside, and she also knew from the look in Ethan's eyes tonight that, whatever this was, it marked merely the beginning. The next morning, pale sunlight filtered through the curtain, yet the house remained shrouded in a heavy darkness. Lauren found herself unable to stop replaying the events of the previous night in her mind. Ethan had always exhibited peculiar behavior since moving in, but last night was something entirely different. He was no longer the shy, reserved young man she thought she knew. There was something in his eyes, an obsession she couldn't quite name, that unsettled her in a way she couldn't fully grasp. She recalled the first morning Ethan had moved in. Michael had mentioned that Ethan needed a place to get his life back on track. But Lauren had sensed there was more beneath the surface. When she pressed Michael for details, he had dismissed her inquiries with a terse explanation the boy had faced hardships since his mother left. With her innate compassion, Lauren had agreed to help without a second thought. Yet now, reflecting on it all, she recognized how little she truly understood about Ethan's past, as if Michael had intentionally kept her in the dark, had deliberately concealed certain details as if there were aspects he wished to keep from her. Her curiosity gnawed at her, refusing to be dismissed. After breakfast, once Em had departed for work, Lauren resolved to confront Ethan directly. She discovered him in the living room, his eyes glued to the television screen, though it was evident he was not truly engaged with it. Lauren settled into the chair opposite him, striving for an air of calm, though her voice quivered with a hint of uncertainty. "Ethan, can we talk for a moment?" The moment he looked up, his piercing blue eyes caught the morning light, yet retained that same distant quality. "What about?" he asked, his tone dry and indifferent as always. Lauren bit her lip, carefully choosing her words. "I just want to understand you a bit better, so we can feel more comfortable living together." Ethan smirked, but it was a hollow expression, the kind of smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Understand me, I don't think you need to." The indifference in his voice pricked at Lauren's patience, yet she was not prepared to surrender. Michael brought up the struggles she had faced with her mother. "Is that true?" she inquired softly, as if treading carefully on fragile ground. His response was momentarily halted. His gaze shifted, and then he straightened the mention of his mother, clearly striking a sensitive chord. "My mother." Ethan echoed, his tone dipping into a hushed intensity. "Not a mother, she's a nightmare." He looked down at his hands, now clenched into tight fists. "She didn't care about me. She only cared about the men." She brought home a chill that ran down Lauren's spine. She hadn't expected him to open up so quickly or so bitterly, but the venom in his tone was undeniable. "And your father?" she asked, her voice softening, as though she were navigating a minefield. Ethan laughed bitterly, the sound short and sharp. "My father. He abandoned me a long time ago. He only cared about his work. When my mother left, he didn't come back for me. I had to grow up on my own, learn to survive." Lauren was at a loss for words. The pain in Ethan's voice was a roar, impossible to fake, yet there was an unsettling quality in the way he regarded her. His gaze lingered on her face, longer than it ought to have, deepening her discomfort. "Then why did you agree to move here?" she asked, attempting to redirect the conversation and alleviate the tension. Ethan's eyes returned to hers, now sharper, colder. "Because of you," he replied bluntly, the words striking her like a sudden gust of icy wind. "You're the only person in this house who sees me as a human being, not as a responsibility, not as a failure." Lauren's throat went dry. She wanted to respond, to deny it, but his gaze seemed to peel away every layer of her thoughts, leaving her exposed. There was something wrong in the way he said those words, as though he was placing her in a role she had never agreed to. "I thought I'd be okay as long as you were here." Ethan continued, his voice softening, but still carrying an unsettling weight. "You're the only reason I came back." Lauren stood abruptly, the air in the room suddenly feeling too thick. It was thick in the air, making it hard to breathe. "I think we should end this conversation here. If you need anything, talk to me or Michael." Ethan didn't utter another word. He merely observed her, his gaze tracing her every movement as she exited the room. Lauren walked away, a distinct sense of fleeing rather than merely leaving enveloping her. As much as she wished to believe this was the end, deep down, she understood the truth. It was only the beginning. That night, the house lay in utter silence, yet sleep eluded Lauren, haunted by Ethan's words from earlier that morning, echoed relentlessly in her mind. "You're the only reason I came back." The statement felt like a confession, a declaration, and a warning all at once. She couldn't shake the image of his eyes, a mix of longing and pain. piercing through her every thought. She had tried to dismiss it as a misunderstanding, but deep down, she knew it had crossed the line. Michael was working another late shift at the hospital, leaving her alone with Ethan once again. She tried not to dwell on it, reassuring herself that nothing would happen yet. The uneasy knot tightened within her. In her stomach, a persistent unease lingered. Lauren considered locking her bedroom door, as she had in the past, yet she hesitated, reluctant to foster an atmosphere of distrust. She didn't want to admit that fear had taken root within her. Ethan, after all, was merely a troubled young man, and she more than anyone understood the pangs of abandonment and the hunger for love. Near midnight, she slipped quietly into the kitchen for a glass of water, hoping to soothe her racing thoughts. As she returned to the living room, she froze, startled to find Ethan there. Sitting on the sofa, bathed in the soft glow of the table lamp, he was neither watching TV nor scrolling through his phone. Instead, he remained still, gazing into the void before him. "Ethan." Lauren's voice broke the silence, soft and tentative. "What are you doing here so late?" He lifted his gaze, his deep, expressive eyes meeting hers. "I couldn't sleep," he replied, his voice low and steady. "What about you?" The atmosphere in the room thickened, almost stifling. "Neither could I," she answered, striving to keep her tone steady. "Too much." On her mind, Ethan stood up slowly, his movements deliberate as he stepped towards her. The faint light from the lamp cast his shadow long across the floor, making him appear almost spectral. "Is it because of me?" he asked, his tone teetering between a challenge and an apology. Lauren froze, her pulse pounding so loudly she thought he might hear it. "No, of course not," she lied, her eyes darting away from his intense gaze. "I'm just tired." Ethan stopped a mere foot away, close enough for her to feel the warmth. "Of his breath, you're lying." His voice wasn't loud, but it carried an unsettling certainty. "You're afraid of me, aren't you?" Lauren opened her mouth to respond, but the words caught in her throat. She felt as if she were rooted to the spot, unable to move. Ethan leaned in slightly, his eyes scanning her face, studying every feature, every detail, as though trying to commit her to memory. I don't want to scare you," he murmured, his voice soft and almost tender. I just can't stop thinking about you." Lauren instinctively stepped back, but Ethan mirrored her movement, closing the gap once again. "Ethan, stop," she said, her voice trembling, yet resolute. "You can't do this." But he didn't halt. Instead, he reached out his fingers, brushing lightly against her arm, a gesture that was both gentle and profoundly unsettling. "You don't understand," he said, his voice cracking slightly. "You don't know how lonely I've been. You're the only one in this house who truly cares about me." Lauren backed away further, only to feel the cold, unyielding wall against her spine. She had nowhere left to go. "Ethan, I'm not who you think I am. I'm Michael's wife, your stepmother. We can't—" But Ethan interrupted, his eyes blazing with desperation. "You're everything I've ever wanted. You're the only one who makes me feel like I matter." Panic rose in Lauren's chest, yet alongside, it was something else, an inexplicable pull, a magnetic force that held her captive in his gaze. The raw vulnerability in his voice, the unmistakable pain in his words, reached into some deep hidden corner of her being. In that moment, her heart sank as she recognized the precariousness of her situation, the threads of control unraveling before her very eyes. The atmosphere in the room was thick with tension, almost suffocating, and while her mind screamed for her to put an end to it all, a part of her remained inexplicably drawn to the intensity of Ethan's gaze. With a force she hadn't anticipated, she shoved him away and fled to her bedroom, slamming the door shut. and locking it with a resolute click. Her chest rose and fell rapidly, each breath a reminder of the chaos within. She understood with a clarity that was both alarming and liberating that she had narrowly skirted the edge of a boundary she dared not cross. Her terror eclipsed even Ethan's actions. But the most chilling aspect was the vague, unshakable feeling stirring within her. A question lingered in the back of her mind: what had she done? And would this truly be the end of it? Lauren couldn't sleep. She sat upright in bed, her back pressed against the headboard, her eyes fixed on the firmly locked door. The dim glow of the bedside lamp cast faint shadows on the walls, making the room feel more sinister than it ever had before. She struggled to dispel the haunting image of Ethan, his desperate eyes, his trembling voice laced with longing. Yet no matter her efforts, it returned vivid and inescapable, as if he lingered just beyond the door. A soft knock shattered the suffocating silence, and Lauren froze, her breath caught in her throat. The knock, though not loud, was persistent, as if the person outside was aware of her presence and had no intention of departing. "Lauren," the voice called, deep, quiet, and painfully familiar. "Go away." "Ethan," she said, her voice trembling slightly, despite her best efforts to maintain composure. Her heart pounded violently in her chest. "I don't want to talk to you. You can't keep hiding like this." His voice remained gentle, yet there was an unnerving resolve in the way he spoke. "I just want to talk." "I promise there's nothing for us to talk about," she snapped, raising her voice in the hope it would compel him to leave. But deep down, she knew it wouldn't be that easy. Sure enough, the knocking resumed, this time louder, more forceful, as if Ethan sought to convey his unwavering presence, a steadfastness that unsettled Lauren. "Ethan, if you don't leave, I'll call Michael right now," she shouted, panic threading through her voice. Her hands quivered as she grasped for her phone, yet instead of stepping back, Ethan released a laugh devoid of warmth. "Michael," he said, his tone shifting, darkening with a blend of anger and sorrow. "He doesn't care about you, Lauren. His focus is solely on his work. Do you genuinely believe he'll rush to your aid? He doesn't even see how isolated you are." Lauren's hand shook as she gripped her phone, poised to dial Michael's number, yet hesitation gripped her. A part of her, one she was reluctant to confront, recognized that Ethan wasn't entirely mistaken. Michael was perpetually busy, often leaving her alone in this vast, silent house. But that didn't mean she would allow Ethan to overstep any further. The rattling of the doorknob sent a chill of icy fear coursing through her. Ethan was attempting to force his way in. "Don't!" she screamed, her voice cracking with a mix of terror and fury. "Ethan, if you don't stop right now, I'll call the—" As the rattling ceased, an oppressive silence enveloped the room. Lauren held her breath, straining to catch any hint of sound. At last, she discerned the faint echo of footsteps. Slow, deliberate, retreating down the hallway. Uncertainty gripped her. Should she feel relieved or stay on high alert? Before she could collect her thoughts, a loud crash reverberated from downstairs, the unmistakable sound of shattering glass, followed by heavy, purposeful footsteps. In an instant, Lauren sprang from her bed, her heart racing as if it might burst. She was acutely aware that Ethan had not left. Instead, he had discovered an alternative route, one that was infinitely more perilous and chaotic. Gripping her phone, she dialed Michael's number, but there was no response. Time was slipping away. She had to safeguard herself. She opened her closet and retrieved the baseball bat Michael had kept for emergencies. Clutching it firmly, she felt a flicker of control surge back into her being. With determination, she unlocked her bedroom door and stepped cautiously into the hallway, her bare feet cold against the wooden floor, listening intently for Ethan's footsteps. Thuds resonated beneath her, accompanied by his voice, low, almost melodic, yet chillingly unhinged. "Did you really think you could hide forever? Lauren, I know you feel the same way I do. Stop pretending." Lauren tightened her grip on the bat, her palms slick with sweat. She descended the stairs slowly, one step at a time, her eyes fixed on Ethan's figure in the dimly lit living room. He stood with his back to her, a bottle of wine clutched in one hand, its contents drained. His gaze was locked on the wall in front of him, a framed wedding photo of Lauren and Michael. "Ethan, stop this right now," she commanded, her voice as steady as she could manage. "You need to leave." Ethan turned slowly to face her, his eyes gleaming with a wild intensity she had never seen before. "Leave," he echoed, a twisted smile forming on his lips. It wasn't warm or kind. It was cold and unsettling. "Do you really think I can do that? You don't understand. I can't live without you, Lauren. You're all I have." A chill spread down her spine as she recognized the look in his eyes. His eyes held no trace of the wounded, misunderstood boy. Instead, they reflected a soul that had unraveled entirely, a being stripped of all control. Lauren's grip on the baseball bat tightened her knuckles, turning white as if it were her sole lifeline. Ethan advanced deliberately, slow and steady, like a predator stalking its prey. She instinctively retreated, her breath hitching in her throat, the air around them thickening with an oppressive tension. "Ethan, don't do this," Lauren urged. Her voice trembled, yet it was infused with as much resolve as she could muster. "You need to stop. Michael will be home any minute." The mere mention of Michael seemed to infuriate him further. Ethan laughed, a bitter cutting sound that sent shivers down Lauren's spine. "He's never here, Lauren. He doesn't even notice how you feel. But I do. I always do." Each word felt like a vice tightening around her, but Lauren understood that she couldn't keep retreating. If she didn't act now, things would spiral completely out of control. "Ethan, listen to me," she said, striving to keep her voice steady yet resolute. "You're hurting both of us by doing this. I want to help you, but not like this." For a brief moment, Ethan hesitated, his eyes betraying a flicker of something, regret, perhaps, or uncertainty. Yet the wildness that had taken hold of him surged back, dark and unyielding. "No," he whispered, his voice cracking under the weight of desperation. "You don't understand. I don't need your help. I just need you." Lauren felt fear coil tightly in her chest, threatening to paralyze her, but she wouldn't allow it. "You need to stop this now, Ethan," she said, her voice rising with renewed strength. "If you take one more step, I'll call the police. I swear I will." Ethan froze, his body taut with tension. For one agonizing moment, his gaze softened, and she caught a glimpse of the boy he once was, a boy lost, broken, searching for something he couldn't find. But then, as if a switch had flipped, his fists clenched and his eyes hardened with defiance. "You won't," he said, his voice a low challenge. At that very moment, the front door creaked open, shattering the oppressive silence, and Michael's voice echoed through the air, calling out for Lauren. A wave of relief surged through her, yet she understood that the turmoil was far from over. In fact, it could spiral out of control. Ethan pivoted sharply, his face contorting into a mask of rage, betrayal, and despair, all at once. "He doesn't belong here," Ethan growled, his voice rising with intensity. "He abandoned me. He doesn't deserve you." And seizing the moment while Ethan was momentarily distracted, Lauren dashed toward the door, her voice piercing the air. "Michael, watch out!" she cried as she reached the threshold of the living room. Michael stepped inside, confusion written all over his face as he absorbed the chaotic scene. Lauren gripping a baseball bat, and Ethan approaching him with wild, determined strides. Before Ethan could close the distance, Lauren swung the bat with all her might, bringing it crashing down onto the coffee table that stood between them. The sharp crack of splintering wood reverberated through the room, halting Ethan in his tracks. He stood there trembling, his energy visibly sapped. As if the sound had yanked him from a trance, his shoulders sagged and his gaze dropped to the floor, a picture of defeat. Michael swiftly approached Lauren, placing a steadying hand on her shoulder. His eyes fixed on Ethan. "What the hell is going on here?" he demanded, his voice a blend of anger and alarm. Still catching her breath, Lauren met Ethan's gaze directly. "He needs help," she said, her voice trembling, yet resolute. "We can't let this go on." Ethan remained silent, his eyes glistening, but the tears were not born of remorse. They were engulfed by the shattering truth that all he had endeavored to construct, every misdirected effort to bridge the gap, to Lauren had disintegrated. Without uttering a sound, he pivoted and retreated his lips, forming silent words, until he finally whispered, "I'm sorry," before hastily exiting into the night. Michael instinctively moved to pursue him, but Lauren halted him, her hand firmly grasping his arm. "Let him go," she said, her voice a blend of exhaustion and resolve. "He needs time, and we need to talk." That night, for the first time in what felt like an eternity, Lauren and Desoy, Michael settled into a chair, and they engaged in a heartfelt conversation about the widening chasm that had developed between them. They reflected on Michael's absence and the weight of the pain that Ethan had borne for far too long. Acknowledging the need for professional guidance, Michael concurred that Ethan should seek help, and together they committed to finding a program that could facilitate his healing when he felt prepared to return. Lauren understood that this was not the conclusion. Ethan remained an integral part of their family, and the events that transpired would linger in their memories. Yet she recognized that this marked the initial step toward mending their fractured bonds. Cracks formed not only within her family, but also deep within herself, as she gazed out the window at the desolate moonlit street. One thought lingered in her mind. She hoped Ethan would find his way, no matter how long it took.